The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was silent. 12 different alien species sat in their floating chairs, looking down at the scarred warrior standing in the center. Commander Vextar's armor showed marks from many battles. His 6 arms hung at his sides as he waited for permission to speak. "You may begin your report," said Council Prime Nethrak. His voice echoed in the huge chamber. Vextar stepped forward. He had fought in 4 galactic wars. He had conquered 17 star systems. But today he felt nervous. The council members whispered to each other. Some laughed quietly. They thought he was crazy. "Honored Council," Vextar began, "I come before you with a warning. There is a species in the outer rim that will change everything we know about war." He pressed a button on his wrist device. A blue-green planet appeared in the air above them. It looked small and peaceful. "This is Earth," he said. "The humans who live there are different from any enemy I have ever faced." Counselor Zephyra of the Quantum Collective made a rude sound. "Commander, your reports say these humans barely have space travel. How can they threaten us? We have weapons that can destroy entire planets." Other council members nodded. They had read the reports. Humans were primitive. They still used chemical rockets. Their weapons were simple projectiles and explosives. The galactic hegemony had technology thousands of years more advanced. "That is what I thought too," Vextar replied. His voice became quiet. "I was wrong." He touched his chest armor where a long scar showed through a crack. "The humans gave me this, and they taught me something I never learned in all my years of war." "Which is?" asked Enthrak. "They taught me that sometimes the weakest enemy can be the most dangerous." Vextar had served the hegemony for 40 years. He had seen species surrender after their first defeat. He had watched civilizations give up when they saw his fleet approach. War was simple. The stronger side won. The weaker side surrendered or died. "The humans do not follow these rules," he continued. "When they should surrender, they fight harder. When they should run, they attack. When they should die, they somehow live." The council chamber filled with more whispers. Some members looked interested now. Others still seemed doubtful. Counselor Yathara leaned forward. "Give us an example, Commander." Vextar nodded. 18 months ago, I was ordered to take the Kepler system. Intelligence said there was only a small human mining operation there. My fleet had 12 dreadnoughts. The humans had 1 small warship and some mining vessels. He paused, remembering. By all military logic, the battle should have lasted 10 minutes. It lasted 14 hours. "Impossible," said Zephyra. 12-to-1 odds with superior technology. "Your crews must have been poorly trained." Vextar's eyes flashed with anger. "My crews were veterans. My ships were the best in the fleet. But the humans," he shook his head. "The humans fought like they had nothing to lose." The hologram changed to show a battle scene. Explosions lit up space around asteroids. Small human ships darted between massive alien warships like insects attacking giants. Their commander was named Dae-Ho Kim, Vextar said. He took his tiny fleet and split it up. Half his ships were just mining vessels with welders and rock cutters. But he used them like weapons. The council watched as the battle replay showed human mining ships ramming into alien vessels. They saw human fighters hide behind asteroids and attack from impossible angles. "They turned cargo ships into bombs," Vextar explained. "They used mining lasers to cut through our armor. When their weapons stopped working, they used their ships as missiles." "Primitive tactics," snorted another counselor. "Effective tactics," Vextar corrected. "I lost 3 dreadnoughts and 2,000 crew members. The humans lost everything, but they made me pay a price I never expected." The images faded. Vextar looked at each council member in turn. "After that battle, I asked my superiors for permission to study these humans more closely. I wanted to understand how such a weak species could fight so hard." "And what did you learn?" asked Enthrak. "I learned that we have been thinking about war all wrong," Vextar said. "We fight to win. Humans fight because they refuse to lose. There is a difference." More whispers filled the chamber. Some council members looked worried now. "The humans have something we lost long ago," Vextar continued. "They have hope. Even when everything seems hopeless, they keep trying. Even when death is certain, they look for a way to survive." He activated another hologram. This one showed Earth itself with its white clouds and blue oceans. "Right now you think this planet is far away and not important. You think these humans are just another primitive species we can conquer or ignore. But I have seen what happens when humans are pushed too far." The image zoomed in to show human cities, human factories, human spaceports where new ships were being built. "Since our conflict," They have built more ships. They have made alliances with species we thought were our enemies. They spread ideas that make our subjects question why they follow us. Ideas? Asked Euthara. Dangerous ideas, Vextar said. Ideas like freedom, like equality, like the right to choose your own destiny. These ideas spread faster than any plague. The council chamber was completely quiet now. Even the skeptics were listening carefully. Commander, said Enthorak slowly, what exactly are you recommending? Vextar straightened his shoulders. I recommend we contact these humans immediately. Not as conquerors, but as equals. We should try to understand them before they understand us too well. And if we do not? Vextar looked at the image of Earth still floating above them. Then I believe these humans will teach the entire galaxy something we may not want to learn. Which is? That even the mightiest empire can fall if its subjects refuse to stay conquered. The warning hung in the air like smoke from a battlefield. The council members looked at each other uncertainly. They had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. How could one small planet threaten that? But looking at the scarred warrior before them, some began to wonder if perhaps they should listen to his warning. After all, Vextar had never been wrong about an enemy before. The question was, would they act on his advice or would they dismiss it like the ravings of a madman? Only time would tell. Vextar closed his eyes and remembered. 18 months ago seemed like yesterday when he thought about the Kepler system. He had been so confident then, so sure of victory. Let me tell you exactly what happened, he said to the council. Let me show you why these humans are not like any species we have conquered before. The hologram above them changed. Now it showed the Kepler system as it was 18 months ago. 3 planets orbited a yellow star. Asteroid belts rich with rare metals floated in the darkness between worlds. My orders were simple, Vextar began. Take the system. Remove any resistance. Begin mining operations. Standard procedure for expansion into primitive territories. He had arrived with the 7th Fleet, 12 dreadnoughts, each one capable of destroying a moon. Support ships filled with troops and equipment. Everything needed to claim a star system for the hegemony. Intelligence reports said the humans had a small mining station on the 3rd planet. Perhaps 50 workers. 1 or 2 security ships at most. Nothing that could threaten a force like mine. The hologram showed his fleet dropping out of hyperspace. The massive ships cast shadows across the asteroid fields as they moved toward the human settlement. I broadcast the standard surrender message, Vextar continued. I told them they had 1 hour to evacuate. After that, we would take the system by force. What happened next still surprised him. Instead of running or surrendering, the humans sent back a message. Just 4 words, come and take it. The message came from their commander, Daeho Kim. I looked up his records later. He was a mining engineer, not a soldier. He had never fought in a real battle, but when I threatened his people, he became something else. The council watched as the hologram showed human ships moving through the asteroid field. They were small vessels, nothing like the massive hegemony warships. Most were just converted mining equipment. I laughed when I saw their fleet, Vextar admitted. 1 corvette that looked like it was held together with metal tape. 6 mining ships with industrial equipment. A few cargo haulers. Against my 12 dreadnoughts. But Commander Kim had done something unexpected. Instead of keeping his ships together for defense, he split them up. He sent them racing through the asteroid field in different directions. I thought he was running, Vextar said. I ordered my ships to pursue and destroy them. That was my first mistake. The asteroids made movement difficult for large ships. Vextar's dreadnoughts were powerful but slow. The human vessels darted between rocks like fish in a coral reef. Then Kim did something I had never seen before. He turned his cargo ships into weapons. The hologram showed a human cargo hauler filled with mining explosives. It accelerated toward one of Vextar's ships, moving at full speed. The pilot, a woman named Hyojin Ko, rammed her ship directly into the alien vessel's engine section. She could have ejected, Vextar said quietly. Her escape pod would have saved her life. Instead, she stayed with her ship to make sure it hit the right spot. She died, but she crippled my flagship. The explosion had torn a hole in the dreadnought's side. Atmosphere and crew members were sucked into space. The mighty warship designed to conquer planets was damaged by a simple cargo vessel. That was when I realized these humans were different, Vextar told the council. They did not fight to win. They fought to hurt us as much as possible before they died. More human ships attacked. Mining vessels used their rock-cutting lasers to slice through alien armor. Industrial ships rammed into hegemony fighters. Every human pilot seemed willing to die if it meant taking an enemy with them. The battle should have been over in minutes, Vextar said. Instead, it lasted 14 hours. Do you know why? The council members waited for his answer. Because every time I destroyed a human ship, another one took its place. Kim had armed civilian vessels. Miners became gunners. Transport pilots became fighters. Old men and young women who had never seen combat suddenly became warriors. Vextar remembered the communications his fleet intercepted. Human voices calling out coordinates, sharing information, encouraging each other. Even as their ships exploded around them, they never stopped fighting. There was a human named Woojin Park flying a mining ship, Vextar continued. His vessel was damaged and losing air. He could not fight anymore, but instead of surrendering, he used his ship's mining beam to carve a message into an asteroid. The hologram showed the carved words in human writing. Earth remembers. I asked my translator what it meant, Vextar said. He told me it was a promise that other humans would come to avenge them. The battle had turned into something Vextar had never experienced. Usually, when a fleet was losing, the enemy would surrender or retreat. But these humans kept fighting even when their defeat was certain. Commander Kim's corvette was the last ship still fighting, Vextar remembered. Its weapons were dead. Its engines were failing. I offered him one final chance to surrender. Kim's response had been simple. No. The human commander used his dying ship's momentum to crash into another hegemony vessel. The explosion destroyed both ships and damaged 2 more. When the battle ended, I had lost 3 dreadnoughts and over 2,000 crew members. Vextar told the council. The humans lost everything. Every ship. Every pilot. Commander Kim died with his vessel. The hologram faded, leaving the council chamber in dim light. But I did not feel like I had won, Vextar continued. I felt like I had barely survived. These humans, these primitives with their simple technology, had made me pay a price I never expected. Counselor Zephyra shifted in her chair. Commander, you are describing a desperate last stand. Many species fight hard when cornered. No, Vextar said firmly. This was different. Most species fight hard to survive. Humans fight hard to make sure their enemies remember them. He activated another image. This one showed intelligence reports from after the battle. Within days of their defeat, news of the Kepler battle spread across human space. They turned their dead into heroes. They used their defeat as inspiration for more resistance. The reports showed human recruitment stations with long lines of volunteers, shipyards working day and night to build new vessels, messages being sent to other species telling them about the humans who died fighting the hegemony. They lost the battle, Vextar said, but they won something more important. They won the right to be remembered. And that memory is spreading. The council chamber was quiet. Some members looked thoughtful. Others seemed worried. After Kepler, I requested permission to study these humans more closely, Vextar continued. I wanted to understand what made them fight so hard. What I learned changed everything I thought I knew about warfare. What did you learn? Asked Enthrok. Vextar looked at each council member in turn. I learned that humans do not fight for conquest or glory. They fight for each other, and that makes them more dangerous than any weapon we have ever faced. The scarred commander paused, letting his words sink in. Because an enemy who fights for conquest will stop when conquest becomes impossible, but an enemy who fights for love will never stop fighting. Vextar's request to study the humans had surprised his superiors. Most commanders would have been happy to file their reports and move on to the next conquest, but the losses at Kepler bothered him. How had such primitive beings fought so hard? My superiors gave me permission to lead a direct assault on the human homeworld, Vextar told the council. They wanted to end the human problem quickly before it could spread to other systems. The hologram above them changed to show Earth hanging in space. Blue oceans and white clouds made it look peaceful and beautiful, nothing like the fortress world it would become. I arrived with a full invasion fleet, Vextar continued. 50 ships, 100,000 troops, everything needed to conquer a primitive planet. But Earth was not the same world it had been before Kepler. The humans had been busy. Orbital defense platforms surrounded the planet like a metal ring. New ships patrolled the outer system. The humans had learned from their defeat. They divided their planet into defense zones, Vextar explained. Each zone had its own commander, its own troops, its own plans. I decided to focus on their largest population center, the Seoul megacity. The image zoomed in to show the massive city sprawling across the Korean peninsula. 20 million humans lived there. It was the heart of Earth's government and military command. The human general defending Seoul was named Yoon-ji Park. I studied her records before the attack. She had been a teacher before becoming a soldier. A teacher of military history. Vextar had expected the humans to fight hard, but he thought their resistance would break quickly. Most species could not handle sustained warfare against superior technology. He was wrong again. General Park had prepared her city for siege, Vextar said, but not in any way I had seen before. She had turned every building into a fortress, every street into a trap, every citizen into a soldier. The hegemony forces landed outside Seoul expecting to face traditional military units. Instead, they found something new. The humans had created what they called total defense. Children as young as 10 years old carried messages between military units, Vextar told the council. Old people too weak to fight served as spotters and guides. Factory workers left their jobs to build weapons and barriers. The hologram showed human civilians working alongside soldiers. Men and women of all ages dug trenches, built barricades, and prepared their city for war. I deployed gas weapons that should have cleared entire districts in hours, Vextar remembered. The humans adapted. They made masks from clothing and plastic. They sealed buildings and kept fighting. One human unit particularly impressed him. Sergeant Hyun-woo Lee commanded a platoon defending a crucial bridge over the Han River. For 6 days, his 30 soldiers held off attacks by thousands of hegemony troops. Sergeant Lee's position was hopeless, Vextar said. I could have destroyed the bridge from orbit, but I wanted to test human endurance. I kept sending ground forces to break them. The humans refused to break. When their ammunition ran low, they used makeshift weapons. When their equipment failed, they fought with tools and bare hands. When their wounded could not be evacuated, they stayed at their posts and kept fighting. On the 4th day, I offered Lee a chance to surrender. Vextar continued. I promised his men would be treated well if they gave up the bridge. Lee's response had been simple but determined. We will hold. I used sonic weapons that caused intense pain, Vextar told the council. The humans covered their ears and charged anyway. I deployed electromagnetic pulses that disabled their equipment. They kept fighting with primitive weapons. But it was not just military resistance that troubled Vextar. The humans were fighting a different kind of war. They were fighting for hearts and minds. A civilian named Sang-min Choi organized resistance cells throughout the city, Vextar explained. These were not soldiers. They were shopkeepers, students, office workers. But they made my occupation impossible. Choi's network sabotaged hegemony supply lines. They rescued captured human soldiers. They spread information that helped coordinate resistance efforts. Most importantly, they never gave up hope. Then there was their propaganda operation, Vextar said. A broadcaster named Mi Kyung-yoon somehow kept transmitting even when we controlled most of the city. Yoon's broadcasts went beyond Earth. They reached other worlds in the sector. She told them about human resistance, about hegemony brutality, about the possibility of freedom. Her words spread faster than Vextar's ships. Within weeks, I had reports of unrest on 3 different hegemony worlds, Vextar told the council. Species that had accepted our rule for centuries suddenly started asking questions. The siege of Seoul became a nightmare that lasted 3 months. Every building the hegemony captured had to be taken room by room. Every street was a battlefield. Every day brought new resistance. The humans had a saying, Vextar remembered. They would write it on walls, carve it into trees, paint it on vehicles. It said, "This too shall pass." The phrase confused hegemony translators at first, but Vextar came to understand it meant that no matter how bad things got, they would eventually get better. The humans believed this completely. I realized I was not just fighting soldiers, Vextar said. I was fighting an entire culture. Every human believed their cause was just. Every human believed they would eventually win. The turning point came when other species in the sector began supporting the humans. Ships carrying supplies slipped past hegemony patrols. Weapons and medical aid arrived from unexpected sources. General Park had done something I thought was impossible, Vextar told the council. She had made the galaxy care about Earth's fate. The final battle for Seoul lasted 48 hours. The humans threw everything they had at the hegemony forces. Sergeant Lee's bridge unit finally fell, but not before destroying the bridge and trapping hegemony reinforcements on the wrong side of the river. When Seoul finally fell, I had lost 15,000 troops, Vextar said. My forces were exhausted and demoralized. The humans had fought so hard that victory felt like defeat. But even in defeat, the humans had won something important. Their resistance had inspired others. Their sacrifice had shown the galaxy that the hegemony could be fought. I held Sol for 2 weeks, Vextar continued. But holding a human city is different from conquering it. The population never stopped resisting, never stopped hoping, never stopped fighting. The hologram showed human civilians continuing their resistance even under occupation. They shared food with each other. They helped wounded soldiers. They planned for the day when their city would be free again. I realized I could destroy Sol, but I could not break the humans who lived there, Vextar told the council. They had something my armies could not defeat. What? Asked Councillor Rithara. They had each other, Vextar replied, and they would rather die together than live as slaves. The scarred commander paused, remembering the faces of the humans he had fought. Soldiers like Sergeant Lee who died protecting their comrades, civilians like Choi who risked everything for freedom, leaders like General Park who turned defeat into inspiration. I left Earth thinking I had won, Vexitar said, but the humans had taught me something that would change everything. They had shown me that some things are worth fighting for no matter the cost. The council chamber was quiet as members absorbed this story. They were beginning to understand why Vextar considered the humans so dangerous. But that was not the end, Vextar continued. The real lesson came later at Titan Station. That is where I learned what humans are truly capable of when they refuse to give up. After Sol, Vextar thought he understood humans. They were brave and stubborn, willing to fight hopeless battles for their beliefs. But he still believed superior technology and numbers would eventually win. He was about to learn how wrong he could be. 3 months after Sol, the Hegemony High Command decided to end the human problem permanently, Vextar told the council. They sent me back with orders to destroy Earth's ability to resist. No more ground invasions, no more siege warfare, complete destruction from space. The hologram above them changed to show the Sol system. Earth hung in the center, surrounded by its moon and orbital stations. But the real target was further out, Titan Station orbiting Saturn. Titan Station was humanity's main shipyard, Vextar explained. Destroy it and Earth could not build new vessels. Without ships, they could not spread their rebellion to other systems. The station was massive, a metal city floating in space. Thousands of humans worked there, building ships and weapons for their war effort. It was defended by everything Earth could spare. The human commander was Admiral Jae-Sung-Oh, Vextar continued. Another civilian turned soldier. Before the war, he had been a factory manager. But somehow he had become one of their best strategic minds. Vextar arrived with the largest fleet he had ever commanded. 80 ships of the line, 300 support vessels, 500,000 troops ready for deployment. It was enough firepower to crack a planet. By all military logic, this should have been simple, Vextar told the council. I had overwhelming superiority in numbers, technology, and firepower. The humans had 1 station and a few dozen defenders, but Admiral O had not been idle. The station bristled with weapons taken from destroyed hegemony ships. Human engineers had reverse-engineered alien technology and improved it. They had built defenses that should have been impossible with their primitive industry. The humans had also done something else, Vextar said. They had convinced other species to help them. 3 neutral governments had secretly sent ships and supplies. The battle began at maximum range. Hegemony dreadnoughts fired their massive guns at the station from across the solar system. The humans fired back with weapons they had built from salvaged alien technology. The first surprise came when their weapons actually damaged my ships, Vextar admitted. Human engineers had somehow increased the power output beyond what the original designers thought possible. Leading the human fighter squadrons was Lieutenant Bo-Ra Nam. She had been a civilian pilot before the war, flying cargo between stations. Now she commanded experimental fighters that moved faster than anything in Vextar's fleet. Lieutenant Nam's fighters used tactics I had never seen, Vextar told the council. They would attack, disappear, then attack from completely different angles. My gunners could not track them. The fighters were small and fragile, but they were piloted by humans who seemed to have no fear of death. They flew into formations of heavy ships, struck crucial targets, and somehow escaped destruction. One pilot named Dongsu Yeo rammed his fighter into my command ship's sensor array, Vextar remembered. He could have ejected safely, but he stayed with his ship to ensure maximum damage. Behind the fighters came something even more dangerous: human innovation. Engineer Kite Seo had converted industrial equipment into weapons that violated several galactic conventions on warfare. They turned mining lasers into ship killers, Vextar explained. They converted manufacturing robots into automated fighters. They even weaponized their waste disposal systems. Every piece of equipment on Titan Station had been turned into part of the defense. Cargo cranes became missile launchers. Life support systems were rigged to create toxic clouds that disabled hegemony troops. Even the station's kitchens had been converted to produce explosive devices. The humans had no right to win, Vextar said, his voice filled with remembered frustration. Their technology was primitive. Their numbers were tiny. Their position was hopeless. But they refused to accept these facts. The battle raged for 2 days. Hegemony ships pressed closer to the station, taking heavy losses but inflicting terrible damage. The human defenses slowly weakened under the constant assault. On the second day, I thought victory was certain, Vextar told the council. Half their weapons were destroyed. Their fighter squadrons were nearly gone. Admiral O had maybe 6 hours before total defeat. That was when the humans did something that changed everything. Captain Donghyun Kang, commanding a crippled destroyer, made a desperate decision. His ship was dying, its weapons dead, its engines failing. Instead of surrendering, he did the impossible. Captain Kang used his ship's remaining power to ram my flagship, Vextar said quietly. But not just any ramming attack. He somehow calculated the exact angle and speed needed to cripple my command systems without destroying his own ship completely. The collision tore through both vessels. Kang's destroyer was destroyed, but the impact disabled the Hegemony flagship's command center. Suddenly, Vextar's fleet was operating without central coordination. At the same moment, their defense coordinator Yu Jinwoo somehow convinced 3 neutral species to openly enter the battle. Vextar continued. Ships that had been observing suddenly began attacking my forces. The arrival of neutral ships changed everything. What had been a simple conquest became a complex political situation. The galaxy was watching, and the humans had turned them into witnesses of hegemony aggression. But the real victory was not military, Vextar told the council. It was psychological. The humans had done something I thought was impossible. What? Asked Ntharak. They had made me question why I was fighting, Vextar replied. Throughout the battle, the humans had broadcast messages to his fleet. Not propaganda or threats, but simple questions. Why were they fighting? Who benefited from conquest? What were they really dying for? A human civilian named Cha Hong spoke directly to my troops, Vextar remembered. She asked them about their families, their homes, their dreams. She made them think about whether conquest was worth the price they were paying. Some hegemony crews began to hesitate. Orders were questioned. A few ships even withdrew from combat without authorization. The human words were spreading doubt through his forces. The final blow came from Admiral O himself, Vextar said. As my forces closed in for the killing blow, he transmitted a message to every ship in my fleet. The message was simple but devastating. We are not your enemies. We are fighting for the same thing you are, the right to live free. Join us and we can build something better together. Several of my ships actually stopped firing, Vextar admitted. My own crews were asking why they were killing people who only wanted to be free. The battle ended not with total victory or crushing defeat, but with something neither side had expected. A ceasefire. Both fleets pulled back to assess the situation. Titan Station was badly damaged but still functional, Vextar told the council. My fleet was intact but demoralized, and suddenly representatives from 6 different species were demanding to mediate the conflict. What had started as a simple military operation had become a galactic incident. The humans had not just defended themselves. They had put the hegemony on trial in the court of public opinion. I realized I had won every battle but lost the war, Vextar said. The humans had shown the galaxy that the hegemony could be resisted. More importantly, they had shown that resistance could succeed. Within days, reports came in of uprisings on 12 different worlds. Species that had accepted hegemony rule for centuries suddenly demanded the same freedoms the humans were fighting for. The humans had done something I never thought possible, Vextar told the council. They had won by refusing to lose. They had turned their weakness into strength. They had made their enemies question their own cause. The scarred commander looked at each council member in turn. That is when I understood the real danger these humans represent, he said. They do not just fight with weapons, they fight with ideas, and ideas are harder to kill than ships or soldiers. The council chamber was completely silent now. Every member understood what they were facing, not just another primitive species to conquer, but something that could change the very nature of galactic civilization. And that, Vextar concluded, is why I stand before you today with this warning. The humans are coming, whether we invite them or not. The only question is whether we will meet them as enemies or as equals. The council chamber fell completely silent after Vextar finished his account of Titan Station. For several long minutes no one spoke. The 12 species that ruled the galaxy sat in their floating chairs, each processing what they had heard in their own way. Finally, Council Prime Nithrak leaned forward. Commander Vextar, your reports are disturbing, but we need to understand exactly what you are proposing. Vextar straightened his battle-scarred armor. I am proposing immediate diplomatic contact with Earth, not as conquerors approaching primitives, but as equals seeking understanding. Equals? Counselor Zephyra's voice carried obvious disbelief. Commander, you speak as if these humans pose some existential threat to our civilization. They are one small planet with primitive technology. That is what I thought too, Vextar replied. But look at what has happened since our conflicts began. He activated his wrist device again. New holograms appeared above the council chamber, showing star maps and intelligence reports from across the galaxy. Since my last battle with the humans 6 months ago, we have received troubling reports from 17 different systems, Vextar said. Species that have been peaceful subjects of the hegemony for centuries are suddenly asking uncomfortable questions. The first hologram showed the Altair system, where the crystalline collective had ruled mining colonies for 300 years. Workers who had never complained about their conditions were now organizing strikes and demanding better treatment. The miners say they heard human broadcasts about something called workers' rights, Vextar explained. Before contact with humans, they did not even know such concepts existed. Another image showed the Vega colonies, where agricultural species had served the hegemony faithfully for generations. Now they were refusing to send their full harvest to the capital worlds, keeping more food for their own families. They call it food security, Vextar said. Another human idea that is spreading faster than any biological plague. More reports float across the holographic display. Trade disputes that had never existed before. Protests on worlds that had been peaceful for decades. Young beings asking why they could not choose their own paths in life. The humans are not spreading these ideas with weapons or conquest, Vextar told the council. They are spreading them through simple communication. Stories about their own struggles. Examples of how different life can be. Counselor Yathara shifted uncomfortably. Commander, you are describing minor civil disturbances. Hardly a threat to galactic stability. Minor? Vextar's voice sharpened. The Rigel Confederacy has formally requested permission to withdraw from the hegemony. The Tau Ceti Federation has stopped paying tribute taxes. 3 different species have asked to establish direct diplomatic relations with Earth. The council members exchanged worried glances. These were not minor problems. The stability that had maintained galactic peace for 1,000 years was beginning to crack. But these rebellions can be suppressed, said another counselor. We have done it before. Have we? Vextar asked. Show me one example where we have successfully suppressed an idea. You can destroy ships and armies, but how do you destroy hope? He activated another display, this one showing human expansion since their conflicts began. What they saw surprised everyone. Look at this carefully, Vextar said. The humans are not conquering territory. They are building alliances. Species are choosing to work with them voluntarily. The display showed human ships working alongside vessels from dozens of different species. Trade agreements, technology exchanges, cultural programs. The humans were creating something that had never existed before. A voluntary interstellar community. Under President In-Ho Moon, the humans have established formal relations with 47 different species. Vextar continued. His military advisor, General Yejin Han, has created defense pacts based on mutual protection rather than domination. The council watched as the display showed human ships helping other species solve problems. Defending trade routes from pirates. Providing medical aid during natural disasters. Sharing technology freely instead of hoarding it. They are not building an empire, Vextar said. They are building something else. Something we do not have a word for. What do you mean? Asked Enthrak. They call it a community of equals, and Vextar explained. Every species keeps its independence. Every world makes its own decisions, but they work together for mutual benefit. The concept was so foreign to the council that some members looked confused. The galaxy had always been organized around hierarchies. Strong species dominated weak ones. That was the natural order. But without central authority, how do they maintain order? Asked Ithara. Through something they call consent of the governed, Vextar replied. Species cooperate because they choose to, not because they are forced to. More displays showed human innovations in governance and diplomacy. Dr. Sujin Bayek, a human xenobiologist, had developed new methods for interspecies communication that actually helped different cultures understand each other better. Dr. Beck's work has prevented 3 different wars between species that had been enemies for centuries, Vextar said. She shows them how to find common ground instead of focusing on differences. Meanwhile, Ambassador Tae-Young Lim was negotiating trade agreements that benefited all parties instead of extracting resources for a dominant power. His methods were creating prosperity in regions that had been economically depressed under hegemony rule. Ambassador Lim's trade networks are growing faster than our own, Vextar told the council. Species prefer to deal with humans because they offer fair partnerships instead of extractive relationships. The evidence was overwhelming. Human influence was spreading across the galaxy, not through conquest but through example. They were showing other species that there was an alternative to the traditional hierarchy of dominance and submission. But this threatens everything we have built, protested Councillor Zephyra. If every species thinks they can be independent, if every world believes it can choose its own path, then what happens to galactic order? Perhaps, Vextar said quietly. Galactic order needs to change. The words hung in the air like an explosion. No one in the council chamber moved. The scarred commander had just suggested something that was almost unthinkable, that maybe the old ways were not the best ways. You are talking about the end of civilization as we know it, said another counselor. No, Vextar replied. I am talking about the beginning of a better civilization. One based on cooperation instead of conquest. One based on mutual respect instead of dominance. He activated one final display. This one showed current military deployments across the galaxy. Hegemony fleets were being pulled away from expansion duties to deal with internal problems. Resources were being diverted from productive activities to suppressing dissent. We are spending more energy holding our empire together than we ever gained from building it, Vextar said. Meanwhile, the human community grows stronger every day because its members want to be part of it. The council members were finally beginning to understand the scope of what they faced. The humans were not just another species to conquer or contain. They represented a completely different way of organizing galactic society. What exactly are you recommending, Commander? Asked Enthrak. I recommend we contact the humans immediately, Vextar said. Not to threaten or negotiate, but to learn. We need to understand how they have created something that attracts others instead of repelling them. And if they refuse to share their secrets, then we will have learned something important about the difference between their civilization and ours, Vextar replied. They share knowledge freely. We hoard it jealously. Which approach has been more successful? The question was uncomfortable because the answer was obvious. Human influence was growing while hegemony authority was weakening. The old ways were failing while the new ways succeeded. I have one more thing to show you, Vextar said. Something that will help you understand why we cannot delay this decision. The hologram changed to show a single human ship approaching the edge of hegemony space. It was small and unarmed, carrying diplomatic markings. That ship contains Captain Wu Jin Shin, Earth's first galactic envoy, Vextar said. He will arrive here in 2 days with a simple message from his government. What message? Asked Enthrak. An invitation, Vextar replied. The humans want to establish formal diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council. They want to work together to build a better future for all species. The council chamber buzzed with whispers and urgent conversations. An invitation from the humans changed everything. It meant they could no longer be dismissed as a distant problem. They were here asking to be treated as equals. The galaxy stands at a crossroads, Vextar concluded. We can choose to see the humans as enemies to be destroyed or as teachers showing us a better path forward. But we cannot ignore them anymore. What do you think they will do if we refuse their invitation? Asked Ithara. Vextar smiled grimly. Based on everything I have learned about humans, I believe they will continue being themselves. They will keep building their community. They will keep showing other species that there is an alternative to domination. And eventually, we will wake up one day to discover that most of the galaxy has chosen their way over ours.